Greetings. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the TED in Your Head podcast. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm your host, Ted Moreno. I am a certified hypnotherapist and high performance coach, and I've been doing this. I'm in my 23rd year of private practice, and maybe I'll just throw in that I love my job. So, my job and the purpose of this podcast is to help people to put their subconscious minds to work to move out those things that stop us from health, happiness, and success. And usually it's negative subconscious programming, lack, limitation, no energy. Once we move those things out, we can also use our subconscious minds to create a mindset where we have the intention and the energy and the focus to pursue a powerful path of personal transformation. So that's what I'm up to. If that's something you want to be up to as well, I invite you to reach out for a free or complimentary half-hour phone consultation. And I'll tell you how to do that at the end of our podcast today. But for now, let's get into today's subject, which is 7 steps for dealing with political anxiety. Political anxiety. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Let's just address the elephant in the room. As you know, a lot of my work, or as you may know, a lot of the work that I do is with clients that are suffering from anxiety, driving anxiety, social anxiety, general anxiety, and other types of anxiety. It's been a very important part of my work for many years now. So, what is political anxiety? Political anxiety is a chronic situational stress response to political events, policy shifts, elections, or societal polarization, characterized by fear, helplessness, and worry. You getting me here? Political anxiety, like any type of anxiety, frequently causes insomnia, irritability, anger, and in severe cases, feelings of depression. Many people are experiencing emotional exhaustion and the desire to just withdraw from relationships and anxiety. And I'm sure many of you out there can relate. Physical symptoms can include headaches, gastrointestinal issues, tension, a feeling of being tight in the body, and various pain in different parts of the body. So this is the result of high levels of stress and anxiety. In addition, emotional feelings of hopelessness, obsessive thoughts like spinning over and over in your mind. What about this? What about that? Anger. And of course, once again, a feeling of helplessness. Now, especially for people with a history of trauma caused by violence or domination, physical domination of somebody else, or physical or verbal abuse, what's happening in our country can be extremely triggering. And the assumption here, of course, is that you're paying attention to what's happening. If you're not paying attention and totally oblivious to what's going on, then you're probably not suffering or experiencing any of these anxiety symptoms. At this point, I want to make something very clear. Personally, I'm very concerned about what's happening in our country. These immigration raids creating fear and intimidation, the recent deaths of Alex Pretty and Renee Good, widespread protests, the polarization and division in our country are very, very distressing situations, regardless of what side of the political divide that you're on. In my practice, I've had many people from both sides come to me with a high level of concern and worry about the future of our country. So I'm not here to talk politics. I'm here to talk about political anxiety. According to the American Psychological Association, more than 7 in 10 adults reported the future of our nation, that's 77%, as a significant source of stress in their lives, making it the most common source of significant stress in this year's survey. The economy was the second most common, with 73% of adults having reported it as a significant source of stress, and the 2024 U.S. presidential election followed closely at 69%. Now, we should be concerned. We should be informed. Thomas Jefferson often emphasized that an informed electorate is the best defense against tyranny. So we have to have a balance between putting our heads in the sand and checking out and avoiding any information at all, and being so overwhelmed by it all that we find ourselves paralyzed with fear and anxiety. So we have to strive for that middle ground. Now, if you're happy with what's going on, if you're not the least bit concerned about the direction of our country, if you are totally happy with the situation, then this podcast is obviously not for you, and that's fine. However, for those experiencing political anxiety, here are 7 steps you can take to deal with those feelings, both in your mind and in your body. And I think the first step, number 1, is pretty obvious. We want to avoid excessive consumption of the news. Even myself the other day sat down to read a book, had my phone with me in case, the wife or kids call, and I ended up doom scrolling for close to an hour, something I never do. So it's easy to do. And what happens is we get that hit of adrenaline when we see something that makes us indignant or mad or angry, right? We get that hit of adrenaline. And these, especially if you're on social media or on a tablet or a computer, these sites are designed to keep you coming back for more. That hit of adrenaline, it can become addicting. So we consciously and intentionally want to be very clear and intentional about the time that we spend consuming the news, right? We don't need to know every detail. We don't need to watch every video. It's good to have a general idea of what's going on because there's a lot going on and we're never going to be able to take in or understand all of it. So avoiding obsessive consumption of the news, and I think it's pretty easy to tell if you took a good long look and you're honest with yourself. It's easy to tell when you're being obsessive. Couple of tips here. Don't watch the news, read the news, or listen to the news. Look for intelligent, critical analysis from credible sources. See, we want to avoid tablets, we want to avoid phones and computers because of what you and I both know as the algorithm. When you start liking or spending more time watching particular posts or particular videos, then your phone or your tablet or whatever platform you're on is going to continue to show you information related to what you just watched. And that's how we end up in our own little bubble, sometimes called our own echo chamber. And it just makes us more angry and more anxious because we're just feeding ourselves stuff that will become increasingly more provocative and insightful. And I mean, as a way to incite you, right? So we want to avoid tablets and phones because of those algorithms, and try reading the news, which uses a different part of your brain, or listening to the news if you're not that big on reading. But watching visual images can be very triggering and can really trigger that anxiety because our minds, can't distinguish between what's happening right in front of us and what's happening on a screen or in a video. Are there certain things we should watch? Absolutely, to make our own determination. But I would suggest to you that if you have political anxiety, reading or listening to the news can be a great antidote. Of course, you want to avoid provocative news sites. These are news sites that are out there to make you angry. Big headlines on whatever side you're on, right? Things that are obviously intended to get an emotional reaction from you or to create that hypnotic state. So avoid provocative news sites, seek credible sources, and if you don't know what credible news sources are, you can do a Google search, and typically these searches will tell you what are generally agreed to be the most credible and non-partisan news sources. Okay? Number two, you want to avoid consumption of news right after you wake up and right before you go to bed. Now, I've talked about this before. This is when you are in a hypnotic state. Your mind is very open. Your mind is very suggestible. And if you start watching the news or listening to the news, chances are it's not going to be good news, right? So this can, in a very, very powerful way, impact how you feel. So my goal is to not check in with the news or social media till after noontime, which works for me pretty well. So in the mornings, I like to meditate. I like to get some exercise. I like to read, have some peaceful time. If I open up my phone or get on the computer, then I'm already going down the rabbit hole. So avoid consumption of news right after you wake up, right before you go to bed, and you'll feel a lot more calm. And instead of looking at the news or looking at your phone, breathe, stretch, meditate, read something inspirational. And if you absolutely need to go on your phone or tablet or computer, then watch something that's going to make you laugh, like funny AI generated cat videos, which I actually find kind of fun. Okay. Number three, don't get your news from social media. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a preponderance of stuff on social media that is AI generated and simply false. Don't get your news from social media. You cannot trust, unless you're following credible news sources on social media, don't get your news from social media. Furthermore, don't waste your time arguing with people online. Don't get involved in these chats. You're not going to change anybody's mind, and they're probably not going to change your mind. It's a waste of time. It creates bad karma. Don't involve yourself. Don't get involved with arguing with somebody online. It's just not worth the time or the effort. If you're going to go online, sign a petition, donate money, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Number four, avoid catastrophizing. I think it's important to understand that fear and intimidation throughout history have always been political tools. So if you allow yourself to get caught up in that fear and intimidation, then that's exactly what the forces out there that want to, take greater control over the populace, and I truly believe that's what's happening here. Those are tools that they use, and you don't want to succumb to them. You want to be clear thinking. You want to be fair. You want to be able to seek information and make your own decision. And when you start projecting into the future what you think is going to happen, that's going to create a lot of fear and anxiety for you. And you don't want to do that. It's not healthy for your mind. It's not healthy for your body. And it's not healthy for our communities and our societies. Is it wrong to be concerned? No, we should be concerned, but to be paralyzed by fear and anxiety by looking into the future and saying, oh, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, that's something you want to avoid because you don't know what the future holds, right? If you believe in prayer, pray. If you believe in manifestation, visualize what you want. And there are some steps you can take, which we'll talk about again in a second. So avoid catastrophizing and being up in your head thinking about what you believe will happen. You simply don't know. Number five, and this is really important, it's a topic of conversation with many of my clients. Draw boundaries around conversations with friends and family. At the same time, you want to avoid hanging out with people that feel the same way that you do and just having a big gripe session. Occasionally, yeah, that's all right, but continually hanging around with people that are complaining or negative, even if they're on your side of the political divide, is not healthy and, in my view, not good for you. I personally welcome political discussions with people that are rational, calm, and informed about the issues. What I will not tolerate is somebody loud, somebody provocative, somebody trying to get my goat. Those conversations I'll just walk. In fact, I won't even give myself an opportunity to get involved. If I'm somewhere and a political discussion begins that's not in good spirit or not in good faith, I'll simply say, okay, I think it's time for me to leave. I'll get up and I'll walk away. And if I'm around people that I like to be around with for the most part and political discussions come up, I'll simply say, you know what? I'd just rather not talk about politics. There's so many other things we could talk about. I'm not interested in talking about politics. Even if it's somebody that agrees with me politically, and they're complaining about the other side, I'll usually say, you know what? Let's just talk about something else, right? Okay. So draw boundaries around conversations with friends and family. It's very important, especially if you want to maintain those relationships that are important to you. And we should want to maintain those relationships, and we don't. For the most part, we don't want to let politics break apart our relationships. However, there may be times when that is absolutely necessary. That's a difficult decision to make. I'll leave that up to you. Number six, take action. The antidote for anxiety is taking action. There's so many things you can do. You can volunteer. You can donate money. You can call or email your elected representatives. You can go out there and protest. Posting stuff on social media, I'm not sure how effective that is. I don't think it's all that effective. Being active, you have to make your own decisions about what works best for you, but there are some things you can do. And I think a good place to start is calling or emailing your elected representatives, donating money to causes that you feel are trying to support the good of the country, and volunteering your time. So taking action is a very important part of not feeling helpless. It's an easy place to get to. Number seven, basic relief of anxiety. All the basic stuff that I've talked about that you want to do to keep yourself centered and grounded. So it's always the same thing, right? Good sleep, moving your body, positive affirmations, mindfulness, grounding exercises, meditation, getting outside is so important for me. Getting outside on my daily walk and getting out of my head, getting out of your head is a very important prescription. So these are basic anxiety relieving techniques that I think if we're practicing every day, we're not going to be so prone to what we call this type of political anxiety. Okay. So I wanted to leave you with that. And I know this is a little bit of a hot button topic. Yet, I'd like to think that most of us living here in the United States, the vast majority of us, want to see our country united. We certainly want the problems of immigration and the problems of, people coming into our country that are certainly criminals. We want those. I think most of us want those problems solved. We want to be able to afford the things that we need to consume to keep us happy and healthy. What we don't want is to see members of our own community getting hurt, killed, murdered. And what we don't need is the rhetoric that's out there on both sides, which is incredibly damaging to our country. So again, to repeat myself, I think in my view, most Americans want to have fair and balanced elections. Most of us want to see this level of polarization decrease. And I think that it all starts with the guy or the woman in the mirror. So do what you can to take care of yourself. Keep yourself centered and grounded. And thanks so much for listening. Take good care, and we'll talk soon. Bye.